What happens when a marriage so lacks honesty and openness that it leads to the ultimate dishonesty of an affair? Can coming clean with your spouse help, or does it spell sure death for the relationship? In a common scenario, I sit down to counsel with a husband who tells me right up front that he has been involved in a series of extramarital affairs. He has never told his wife about any of them, yet he feels terribly guilty about all of them. As therapy proceeds, I suggest that he confess all this to his wife. With some fear and trepidation, he does so, and she responds with predictable reactions: anger, anxiety, and finally depression. In time, however, she somehow gets through the shock and pain. Then their marriage can begin to be built on mutual honesty, perhaps for the first time. When a couple deals with trying to survive an affair, I train them to become thoroughly candid with each other. They must conceal nothing of what they think or feel. Only through total openness can an honest relationship emerge. If they compromise at any point, it will only undermine the rebuilding process. You may wonder if it is always wise for the straying spouse to confess his sins to his wife. In my experience, having the straying mate confess has never been the primary cause of a divorce. Some couples do go on to get a divorce because of the affair, but not because they have finally spoken honestly with each other. Instead, quite commonly, the betrayed mate, be it husband or wife, emerges from the initial shock of learning about the affair, willing to examine and consider ways to resolve the marriage's problems. A lot depends on the therapeutic environment provided for the couple. The counselor must create an atmosphere that motivates the couple to discuss solutions for their real problems after the affair has been uncovered and exposed. Once the dishonesty has been revealed, I make a special effort to help the couple to see the situation clearly. They have experienced a needed purging that provides them with their only opportunity to make a stable and lasting marriage. Now I must give them guidelines for restoring trust. A husband with a history of lying may insist that his confession of the affair by itself proves he has reformed. He may want his wife to begin to trust him again immediately, but here I insist otherwise. You cannot turn on trust like a light switch. Rather, numerous experiences through which a person proves himself trustworthy build it. In a situation such as a confessed affair, I strongly recommend that a husband provide daily information to his wife, which she can easily check for accuracy. I suggest to the man who has lied to his wife that he must write down a copy of a schedule for her to see every day. If the schedule changes through the day, he should try his best to notify her immediately. She should be able to call some of the places he has listed on his schedule in order to verify his presence. Usually they can handle this process of verification in a way that avoids any embarrassment to either husband or wife. I often get flack from the husband about having to provide this kind of schedule. He often complains about legalism, childish rule-keeping, and he says all this checking will only prove she doesn't trust me after all. But that's just the point. She doesn't. In response, I simply comment that a well-organized person plans his schedule. Why should he be reluctant to share it with his wife? A wife should feel free to call her husband any time during the day, even in relationships that exhibit no problem with trust. The procedure I've outlined sometimes takes years. Gradually, however, the wife finds through repeated verification that her husband is being honest with her. Then and only then can she begin to trust him to the point where she need not do any more checking up. The typical woman needs the ability to communicate with her husband any time of the day or night in order to sustain this feeling of openness and honesty. Most women will not abuse this privilege by calling their husbands out of important meetings or otherwise interrupting them at work. However, the wife must know that she can call if she wants to, and she believes that when she calls, her trust in her husband is confirmed. He needs a good-looking wife, an attractive spouse. At 26 and 190 pounds, Nancy seldom had dates, 4 in the last 2 years to be exact, and no calls back after the first one. Her prospects for marriage seemed bleak, to say the least. Even though she had a charming personality and many interests, few men wanted to date her. One day, Nancy decided she had to make a change. She wanted to marry, and she was tired of her job. If I had someone to take care of me, she thought, I could quit the job and stay home all day. I'd like that. As her first tactic in achieving that goal, Nancy enrolled in an exercise program, went on a diet, and lost 60 pounds. Next, she bought some new clothes that nicely accentuated her slender figure. A new hairdo and appropriate makeup completed the transformation. With 60 pounds gone and the other improvements, Nancy became a real knockout. Now she had dates right and left, but she had not forgotten her goal, a husband. About 8 months later, when Harold proposed, she said yes. She had achieved her goal with great speed. When I counseled Nancy and Harold about 5 years later, I started by speaking to them separately. Harold told me the first thing she did after we were married was to quit her job. Then she stayed home eating like mad all day. She blew up like a balloon. She's gained about 100 pounds since we've married. Have you said anything about her weight? I asked. Yes, many times. In fact, it's a sore point between us. But she just says, I want you to love me for who I am. If you'd love me and accept me unconditionally, then I could easily lose the weight. I'm getting fed up, Harold continued. I don't know where to turn. I don't believe in divorce, but I can't handle this and something has to happen. As we continued to talk, I could see Harold faced a real dilemma. Reared in a conservative church, he held strong convictions about marriage being a commitment for life. But whereas he had once looked forward to a happy future with a wife everyone seemed to admire, now life with Nancy seemed like a prison sentence. Marriage to this woman had hardly lived up to his expectations. Where had he gone wrong? Next, I talked to Nancy to get her side. She told me about her self-improvement program to get dates and a husband. Nancy had never told Harold that she had once gained so much or that she didn't think she could keep the weight off after marriage. For her, dieting had been an agony, and even keeping slim was too great a sacrifice if it was for life. When she married Harold, she thought he would love her regardless of her weight, and she could go back to being fat and happy. So when he told her he was leaving if she didn't lose weight, she felt he was being unfair. Things didn't seem fair to Harold either. He had married someone physically appealing and assumed she'd stay that way. Nancy had thought that once Harold got to know and love her, her weight would no longer matter to him. But she was wrong. Granted, some men do not care about physical appearance. Their wives can be overweight or underweight. It makes no difference. They have other emotional needs that are far more important than the need for an attractive spouse. But Nancy had not married one of these men. In fact, she had married a man for whom physical appearance was at the very top of his list. He needed an attractive wife. Some women also have a need for an attractive husband. Many wives I've counseled have given their husbands the ultimate threat. You either lose weight or our marriage is over. One woman I counseled would not live with her husband until he lost 50 pounds. If a person considers the need for an attractive spouse as the most important emotional need, physical appearance is serious business in that marriage. In Harold and Nancy's marriage, it was that serious. Nancy listened intently as I explained that a marriage commitment means meeting the needs of your mate. She wanted Harold to earn a good living, to be affectionate to her, talk with her often, and so on, but she wasn't holding up her end of the bargain. What do you mean, not holding up my end? She snapped. I cook good meals. I keep the house clean. I'm affectionate. All that is good, but you're missing something, I explained. Your physical attractiveness is very important to your husband. This isn't some quirk or whim. It's something he needs very badly. The beautiful woman he married hides under all that excess weight. By taking care of your body, you take care of your husband. Nancy didn't quite hear me at first. She persisted in arguing, Harold should love me as I am. You want to be loved for who you are and not for what you do, I said. We all do. But you didn't decide to marry your husband for who he is, but rather for what he did. If he had not met any of your emotional needs when you dated him, you would not have even considered him as a life partner. And if after you were married, he stopped meeting your needs, your feelings for him would have changed considerably. Your love would have simply faded away. Many men think affection is a trivial need. Many women think sex is trivial. Some men and women think admiration is trivial. But none of these things are trivial to those who need them. Nancy couldn't see that physical appearance was not a trivial need. She wanted to believe that it was Harold's shallow sense of values that was the culprit. If he would grow up and be more mature, he would look beyond her appearance. But we kept at it, and Nancy finally decided to lose weight. She didn't want to risk living without Harold, and she knew deep down inside that it would be healthier for her as well. She enrolled in an exercise program, went on a diet, and lost 40 pounds in 3 months. Once Harold saw she meant business, he joined her in the exercise program. Nancy wanted to lose all the weight she'd gained since their wedding, and she stuck to her exercise and diet. Once she got down to a desirable weight, Harold liked it, and she did too. It greatly improved her feeling of self-esteem, and her attractiveness was the most important contribution she could make to her husband's happiness. Many women and men have a problem like Nancy's, though it may be less severe. After they marry, they start to put on weight or dress less becomingly, figuring that their spouse loves them, so what they look like doesn't matter. For some people, especially husbands, nothing could be further from the truth. Why all the fuss about looking good? People often challenge me when I list an attractive mate as one of the most important emotional needs. Surely, I'm told, men should have more maturity and higher values than to hold physical attractiveness up as an ideal. Shouldn't we be looking beyond the surface and into more meaningful human characteristics, such as honesty, trust, and caring? Besides, what if a woman simply doesn't have the equipment? Beauty, of course, is in the eye of the beholder, and I am not encouraging a wife to try to look like a beauty queen. I simply mean that she should try to look the way her husband likes her to look. She should resemble the woman he married. Does that mean a woman must stay eternally young? Of course not. But getting old is not an excuse for gaining weight and dressing like a bag lady. This is exactly what Nancy did, and it got so bad that she and Harold wound up coming to see me for help. Fortunately, under all the weight, Nancy had a determination to achieve her goals. Her story ended happily, but many do not. I've counseled other wives and husbands who refuse to change. At best, this kind of marriage limps along. Often a husband is tempted to turn to women whom he finds more attractive. If your husband tells you that your loss of weight would meet one of his most important emotional needs, you must decide if you care enough about your husband to meet his emotional need. When she looks good, he feels good. A man with a need for an attractive spouse feels good whenever he looks at his attractive wife. In fact, that's what emotional needs are all about. When one of his emotional needs is met, he feels fulfilled, and when it's not met, he feels frustrated. It may sound immature or superficial, but I found that most men have a need for an attractive wife. They do not appreciate a woman for her inner qualities alone. They also appreciate the way she looks. Do most women have the same need for attractiveness in their husbands? No. They may want their husband to look decent, but most women do not rank an attractive spouse among their top 5 emotional needs. Women often fall in love with men who are overweight, homely, or sloppy dressers because these men know how to meet their most important emotional needs, such as the needs of affection, conversation, and financial support. I remember an overweight, balding man who was 20 years older than his extremely pretty wife. Nonetheless, she was crazy about him, and they shared a very active sex life. Why? What did she see in him? That's just the point. Instead of looking at him, she looked within him and found a warm and sensitive man, kind and generous, who loved her as deeply as she loved him. To her, he was rather nice looking. Was she more mature than her husband, who was admittedly attracted by her appearance? No. She simply had different emotional needs. For her, physical attractiveness did not do as much for her as it did for him. She put effort into making herself look good because she knew it would make him happy. In return, he put effort into meeting her needs for affection, conversation, and financial support. Any woman can enhance her attractiveness to her husband. There are plenty of books, videos, diet programs, and other products designed to help women and men shape up, dress with style, color their hair properly, and so forth. As I counsel women every week, I observe 5 major areas that are particularly important in staying or becoming attractive. Let's give them a quick survey. The secret to weight control. Every year, several more bestsellers appear offering the latest foolproof diet or weight control plan. Here's mine, Harley's third corollary. Balance your intake of calories with the proper amount of exercise. I'm sorry I can't sound more sensational, effortless, or intriguing, but there is no secret to weight and figure control. It takes discipline, and that's been known for centuries. I counsel many women who just don't believe me. They keep hoping for some revolutionary new gimmick that will solve their weight problem with little or no effort. Or they crash diet and soon gain it all back. Then they crash again and again. Sooner or later they give up, fatter than ever. The truth is that weight control programs work only when they are a way of life, based on the facts of life. All bodies, including female ones, are machines that burn fuel. When the body takes in too much fuel and doesn't burn it off, it stores the fuel in the form of fat. So if you want to avoid getting fat, you must burn all the fuel your